The story begins with a boy named Kazuya. He stumbles upon a thug wielding a knife, who is threatening some girls. Kazuya tackles him to the ground, but he gets stabbed, and ends up dying. He wakes up in the body of a young boy, and he becomes confused as he sees his reflection in the mirror. We learn that he has been asleep for a week, so his mother Sarah checks up on him, thinking that he must be hungry, so she orders the maid Sylvia to bring him some soup. They leave him in the room, telling him to rest, and Kazuya realizes he has been reincarnated into another world, so he looks around his surroundings, trying to understand the world he's in. Sylvia arrives with his soup, which she feeds him, before trying to put him to bed. Sylvia answers his questions, and he learns that he is a 3-year-old boy named Cain. He is the third son of a high-ranking noble named Garm, who has an army that protects the kingdom of Esford against foreign invaders. He becomes excited, as he learns that he now lives in a world where adventurers use swords and magic to defeat monsters. He wants to learn magic, but Sylvia tells him that he must first learn how to write, so he starts studying, wanting to live in that world. Later, his family is surprised to find he has already learned how to read and write. His sister Rain adds that he can even do math, so they start to think that he is a genius, but he is really just a high schooler stuck in the body of a 3-year-old boy. They wonder why he is now interested in studying, because he seems to be a different person, and Cain explains that he just wants to learn everything he can about the world. Garm supports him, saying that it will help him become a successful person and allows him to read books about magic and history. Sarah is happy to learn he is interested in magic, but they don't think that he is ready for that yet, saying he's too young to use magic, so he should just study the books for now. However, Cain realizes that he can already use magic, but he is having a hard time controlling it, and he tries to hide it from everyone around him. Rain realizes that he is studying about the outside world, so she teaches him about the 300-year history of the kingdom as well as the different races in the world. After 2 years, the day of Cain's baptism has arrived, and they ride a carriage as they make their way to the venue. Cain is happy to see the outside world, asking his sister to show him her stats after going through the ritual. So Rain opens her status window, and Cain learns that Rain can use 3 types of elemental magic. Sarah reveals that Rain was granted a level 2 blessing by the god of magic, which is very useful because it determines how much magic is needed to activate a spell, and it even affects the skills. They explain that the blessing goes up to level 5, and it's given by one of the 7 pillar gods they worship, as part of their kingdom's religion. They arrive at the venue, where they kneel before the statues of the 7 gods, and the priest begins the ceremony, asking the gods to show Cain the path he needs to walk on. A bright light illuminates the area, and Cain is instantly transported to the world of the gods. He is shocked to learn that the gods have been waiting for this day, addressing him as Kazuya. The god of creation, Xenum, introduces himself, as Cain thinks about his weird appearance, but Xenum knows what Cain is thinking, since he is a god. The god of death and rebirth, Rime, reveals that his death was unexpected, because if he didn't interfere, the thug would have tripped and would have gotten caught. This makes Cain feel bad, since he died for nothing, but the god of earth was moved by his good deeds, so he was reincarnated into this new world. Rime apologizes, because Cain was not supposed to recall his memories at the age of 3, but Cain tells her that it's okay, since it allowed him to write and use magic, and even enjoy life with his new family. The god of magic takes a liking to him, so she gives him her blessing. Xenum follows suit, and the god of war gives him his blessings, along with his swordsmanship and martial arts. The god of technology also grants his blessing, telling him to use his knowledge from his previous life to make progress in the world. The god of commerce gives him the judgment and item box skills, while the god of earth gives him some unique skills that he can use when he returns. Xenum laughs as he sends Cain back with the blessing of all the gods, and the priest states that this is the first time he has seen the statues shine with such brilliance. Garm wants to see Cain's status window, thinking he must have received multiple blessings, but Cain doesn't want to show it to them, because he thinks it might be a problem. So he runs away, claiming that his stomach hurts. He hides as he checks his status window, and he is shocked to see that all of his magic, blessings, and skills are at level 10. Cain thought that the highest level was 5, so he wonders what the gods were thinking when they gave him their blessing. He wants to hide it from everyone, but he realizes that Xenum granted him the ability to conceal his status. After that, we see him at the dining table with his family, where they discuss the light from the baptism ceremony. Garm asks Cain about his status, so he shows it to them, thinking that he has already concealed his status, but they are still shocked by the numbers, especially his magic score, because even palace mages can't come close to that number. Garm states that with his skills, he will be successful no matter what job he chooses, warning Cain never to show his status window to anyone, because he could be seen as a threat to the kingdom. Cain returns to his room, wondering what is considered as average stats. He sees a book about summoning magic, so he goes outside to summon a fluffy animal, but he ends up summoning a demon instead. It starts attacking his sister, who happens to be passing by, and he tries to attack the demon with a fire spell, but the demon grabs onto him, while he uses a return spell to send it back. He drops to the floor and passes out, but he eventually regains consciousness, and is happy to see that his sister is smiling because of his deeds. Later, he is presented to a crowd during his debut, where he reveals that his goal is to become an adventurer and protect everyone. Garm tells him that he needs to study more to achieve his goal, arranging for a tutor to help him out. We see him reading in his room, as he wonders what his tutor is going to be like. His tutors arrive. One of the tutors, Millie, nervously introduces herself, while the other one, Nina, makes a very short introduction, and Millie tells her not to be rude to the nobles. But Cain tells them they don't need to be formal when speaking to him, since they are his tutors, making them feel relieved. Garm wants them to teach Cain for 3 years, and they immediately begin his training. They head to the training grounds where Millie tells him to try doing some swings, but she is shocked by how skilled he is. Nina comments that he might be better than Millie, making her upset, so she challenges Cain to a mock fight. Cain charges at her, and she struggles to block his attacks. Nina asks Cain if he received the blessing of the god of war, and he admits to it as he continues his fight. Millie backs off, saying she won't be able to last if they keep up at that pace, so he should start learning magic from Nina. Nina reveals that she has a level 3 blessing from the god of magic, wanting to start with teaching the basics, but Cain tells her that he already knows the basics, demonstrating some beginner-level magic to prove his point. However, Nina tells him that he just used enchanted magic, when it takes intense training just to shorten incantations, so she concludes that he is a genius. Millie points out that he even used all the elements, which Nina thinks is impossible, because there is no one in that world who can use all the elements that effectively. Cain admits that he also has the blessing from the god of magic, making his tutors impressed. His tutors are shocked when he offers them a towel from his item box. They realize that Cain is just too amazing, and they can no longer teach him within the mansion, because he could end up destroying the mansion with his powers. They go to Garm, explaining the situation as they ask for his permission to train Cain outside the mansion. The next day, they leave the mansion, and Nina instructs him to use an intermediate level magic on a boulder, so he uses a fire spell, which makes the rock explode, blowing his tutors away, and leaving behind a huge crater. Nina tells him that the spell was way beyond intermediate, while Millie wonders why he still doesn't feel tired, making them realize that he has an insane amount of magic. A killer rabbit suddenly appears, charging toward Cain, but he dodges its attack and counters with wind magic. He stores its remains in his item box so that he can show his family when he gets back home. Millie wishes she had a magic bag, which functions like an item box, but it is too expensive for her to afford. Nina uses a search spell to look for more monsters to hunt, revealing the location of nearby creatures. Cain wants to learn the spell, so Nina gives him a brief explanation about it, and he tries it out, allowing him to detect nearby creatures, as well as the type of creatures that were discovered. They take out the creatures, but one monster retreats to the forest as Cain runs after it. Millie stops him, saying that the forest is full of strong monsters that attack the city every few decades, which explains why it is so heavily fortified. That evening, Cain realizes that he is already at level 8, because he has a skill that gives him 100 times experience, and he blames the gods for making him too overpowered. They go to the guild hall to look for a quest, but they come across a brawny guy who looks down on them for being D-rank adventurers, asking them if their quest is babysitting since they are spending time with a kid. He orders Millie to pour him a drink, but Millie refuses, and Nina tells him that they are on duty. This makes him upset, so he grabs onto Nina while his companions restrain Millie. Cain slaps the man's hand, making him fall to the ground as he squirms in pain. The man tries to retaliate, But he is no match for Cain, so he draws out his sword, relentlessly attacking Cain, who easily dodges his attacks. Cain catches his sword using 2 fingers and throws him outside. His companions threaten to kill Millie, but Cain charges at them, tossing them outside as well. His tutors thank him, and Millie is surprised he is also good at martial arts, but he claims that he just studied it from some books. They head back to the forest where they continue their training, and after 3 years, the contract of his tutors are about to come to an end. He wants to thank them for being good to him, and remembers that Millie wanted a magic bag, so he goes to the forest to look for the materials needed for the bag. He easily defeats the powerful monsters in the forest, but a guard sees the pillars of fire that he used, and thought that the monsters were preparing to attack the city again. The guard sounds the alarm, so Garm heads to the forest with his soldiers, but instead of seeing monsters, they encounter a huge crater. Cain completes the last part of his training, and he gives them the magic bags that he made. He tells them about the monsters he defeated, and we learn that it would normally take a party of A-rank adventurers, but he did it on his own. Cain tells them that the magic bags could hold a whole mansion, and only they can hold onto it, but they tell him that it would be considered beyond a national treasure level item. But they bid each other farewell, saying they all had fun during the experience. 2 years later, Cain is now 10 years old, and they head to the royal capital for Cain's debut, which is a mandatory event for all noble sons. His father tells him that their journey will take 1 week if no monsters get in the way. Cain uses his search ability to detect any nearby threats, and tells his father that people are being attacked by monsters 3 kilometers ahead. Garm orders his men to pick up the pace, but Cain knows they won't make it in time to save the people. So he jumps out of the carriage and uses a boost spell to run ahead. Meanwhile, the monsters are about to wipe out the people, and a soldier desperately tries to protect the royal carriage. A monster approaches the carriage, but Cain suddenly appears, killing the monsters with ease, and defeating the general with his fire sword. He checks up on everyone, introducing himself as the son of Garm, and using a healing spell to help the soldiers recover, but some of the soldiers didn't make it, so he stores their bodies in his item box. At that moment, Garm arrives, wanting to help, but he realizes that the fight is over. The door of the royal carriage opens, revealing 2 girls, Princess Telestia and Miss Silk, the Duke's daughter. They introduce themselves to the ladies, and the princess collapses from the stress. Cain casts a spell to help them relax, making their hearts lighter. The girls thank Cain for saving them, revealing that they saw him fight from their carriage window. They start fighting over him, and Silk asks him what brought him there, so he explains that they are going to the royal capital for his debut. The girls reveal that they will also be having their debuts, wanting Cain to travel with them. As they travel, he sits between the 2 girls in the royal carriage. He doesn't feel comfortable in his position, so he wants to move to another seat, but the girls won't let him go. They arrive at a town, where the girls want Cain to spend the night with them, because they feel safer around him. Garm asks for them to reconsider, since it would be inappropriate for boys and girls to share a room, but the girls tell him that they are still traumatized from the last attack, so they want Cain to protect them. Cain is pressured into sharing the room with them, but agrees under the condition that the room is huge. They go to their rooms, but Cain realizes that the beds are too close together. The girls want Cain to sleep in the middle, as they move the beds closer to each other. The girls get closer to him, claiming that they are scared, and Cain becomes too nervous to go to sleep. This goes on for a few nights, making Cain sleep deprived as they arrive at the royal capital. When they exit their carriage, they are greeted by the vice captain named Gazard, who thanks Cain for saving the girls and his men. Cain removes the remains of the fallen guards from his item box, wanting everyone to recognize they bravely fought against the orcs to protect the girls. Cain is about to leave, but Gazard grabs onto him, telling him that he will have an audience with the king. Gazard takes him to the king's hall, where he meets the king. He pays his respects, and the king tells everyone how he saved the carriage by defeating the group of orcs. The king acknowledges his heroic exploits, saying that the girls wouldn't have survived without him, so he makes Cain a baron, giving him his own mansion. A noble named Corgino speaks out, saying that Cain is too young to be a baron, but the king points out that he couldn't perform the same feats that Cain has accomplished, so Corgino backs off. Cain reluctantly accepts the title of baron, and the king concludes the audience, telling him to go backstage. We see Cain in a room with his father, who comments that Cain is the first among his sons to be promoted. The king joins them, bowing to Cain as he thanks him for saving his daughter. Cain is not comfortable seeing them in such a position, asking them to raise their heads, but the king felt the need to thank Cain as a father. The king tells him that since he excels in both magic and the sword, and even has the blessing of the gods, the kingdom can't leave such a talented child to his own devices. That's why he is given the title of Baron, even asking him to marry Princess Telestia, while the Duke also wants him to marry his daughter. Cain is shocked, but the girls are happy, as the king explains that he will now be engaged to the two girls, because he has slept with both of them. But we learn that this was all part of their plan to keep Cain in the kingdom. They continue to pressure Cain, and he eventually agrees to marry their daughters. We see Cain in the capital church, where he prays to the gods, allowing him to enter their world once again. He asks the gods about his stats, and Xenom admits that his stats are insane, so he is probably the most powerful human in the world, asking him if he wants to become a demigod. However, he tells Cain that there are limits to what he can do alone, warning him not to test those limits. Xenom tells him that there isn't much entertainment in his current world, so he suggests using his knowledge from his previous life to create something. Cain thinks about bringing in an item that doesn't exist in that world, and Xenom agrees with his idea. Cain returns to the world, and he sees a cat girl named Parma, who tells him that she's under training at her uncle Tamani's shop. Cain visits the shop, commenting on the wide variety of goods that they have. He tells Tamani's about the item that he has in mind, drawing it out and explaining the details to him. Tamani's likes the concept, and he thinks that he could produce it at a very affordable price. Cain wants to see a prototype, giving him a gold coin to cover the expenses, and telling Tamani's that he can consider it as an upfront investment. Tamani's accepts the task, and he assures Cain that he will give it his best. After some time, Tamani's shows him the prototype. Cain thinks it looks great, playing a game with Parma to demonstrate how the game is played, and Tamani's gets excited, thinking that the game is sure to catch on. Cain suggests that they should use a different version for nobles, because he is certain that the nobles would want a fancier version. Cain wants him to mass-produce the product, giving him the funds needed to do so. Tamani's is shocked, bowing to Cain as he promises to do his very best. They take their sample to the altar, swearing to the god of commerce that they will uphold their end of the contract, causing the prototype to vanish as it is accepted. As a result, no one will be able to produce the same product for 3 years. Cain wants them to start selling the product in the next month, asking Tamani's to prepare an extravagant one for the royal family. After that, he makes his way home, and he is informed that the debut is about to begin, so he rushes to get ready and leaves with his parents. Garm knows that Cain will get a lot of attention because he recently became a baron, so he warns his son to watch out for parents who want to introduce their daughters to him. They arrive at the venue, where the royal family makes their appearance. The king gives a speech about the next generation, and Cain goes to the king with his family, and he presents the game that he developed with Tamani's. The king is interested, wanting to talk to him after the ceremony. Garm wasn't aware of the game's development, and Cain explains that he needs to find other sources of income to help him maintain the mansion. His parents leave, as they tell him to interact with the other children. Cain sits with Silk, who displays her interest in him as she starts teasing him, but Corgino's son Habit interrupts them, giving Silk a compliment and expecting her to reciprocate, but Silk just silently greets him. One of Habit's friends demands that Cain show his respect to Habit, so he gets up to greet Habit, introducing himself as Baron Cain, but they think he is just a son of a baron, so they start looking down on him. Habit thinks that Cain must be from a poor family, since he didn't even mention his last name, and he threatens to have his friends beat him up if he doesn't apologize for his rudeness. But Cain tells Habit that he is the one being rude, so they go outside, where Habit wants to fight him. Habit reveals that his friends have God's blessing, and they can even use magic. The first guy steps up, and he tries to show off, conjures a really weak fireball, which Cain easily dodges. The other one also tries to be flashy, but he just launches some weak rock projectiles. They are about to attack again, but Silk becomes annoyed, so she tells them that Cain is not the son of a baron, but he is the baron himself, telling them about his impressive feats. She orders them to bow since he outranks them, and they obey, begging for his forgiveness as they leave the scene. Silk realizes that Cain has a dark side, because he let the situation drag on to make things more interesting, even though he knew that the kids were mistaken. but she promises to keep it a secret from Telestia if Cain goes on a date with her. At that moment, Telestia arrives, wanting to know what happened, but Silk just tells her that they are going to go on a date. Telestia becomes jealous, so Cain tells her that he will also go on a date with her. The king interrupts them, summoning Cain for their meeting, where they play the game Cain developed. The king enjoys the game, wanting to keep it exclusively between them, but Cain reveals that it's going to be made available to the public. The Duke is also there, and they take the chance to remind him that his engagement with their daughters is a secret, telling him to be careful on his date. The next day, Cain is given the deed and key to his new mansion. He goes to check it out, but when he arrives, he finds it's completely run down. As he enters, the lights don't work, so he uses his magic to light the way. He checks out the rooms, but finds that everything is filthy and all the rooms are empty. But it doesn't bother him, as he uses his magic to instantly repair and clean the entire mansion. He fixes up all the rooms, and the mansion is as good as new. He gets a visitor, and it turns out to be his maid Sylvia, who is overjoyed to be working for him again, and he meets his new butler, who introduces himself as Colin. Sylvia is keen to get started right away, ordering the other maids to start cleaning, but they find that everything is completely spotless, and Cain admits to cleaning everything with his magic. Colin reminds him to go back to his family, and Cain remembers that his older brothers are coming home to visit. We meet his brothers, and they are impressed he received a mansion and became a baron so quickly. Rain wants to visit his mansion, but her brothers warn her it could be haunted, since the mansion is so run down. But Cain assures her that it will be okay. They go to visit his mansion, and they are shocked because it's not run down at all. His father finds it strange, because the mansion was falling apart the last time he visited, but he realizes it must have been Cain's doing. They are impressed with all the rooms, but his father says that it's missing some art. Cain wonders why he needs art, and Garm explains that nobles are very fond of it, decorating their mansions with things like paintings, armors, and even mounted monsters. Hearing this, Cain decides to put one of his monsters up. Sylvia suddenly screams, and they wonder what is going on. The maids are shocked, as they see an enormous red dragon, and Cain realizes he forgot to tell them about it. His father demands an explanation, and Cain says it's just a monster that he defeated. His father is shocked, wondering when he defeated it, and Cain reveals it was when he was in the forest a while back. His father tells him that a red dragon would be considered a calamity-level monster, and even A-ranked adventurers wouldn't be able to defeat it. His father says that the mounted red dragon would be worth 1,000 platinum coins, and Cain is shocked thinking that would be worth $100 million. They suddenly hear another scream, so they rush over to check it out. His mother asks him about the toilet, because it sprayed water at them, and it was like nothing they had ever experienced before. Cain explains that he used his magic to make it shoot water, and Rain asks him to install one in their house. Garm calls them dramatic for freaking out over a toilet, but they tell him to try it out himself. So he gives it a go, and finds it delightful, instantly changing his mind, and requesting one as well. His father tells him that his visitors will also enjoy the experience, and Cain wonders what he means. His father says that when a noble is given a mansion, it's a rule that they must host a debut party, and Cain is shocked to learn he has another debut. Later that night, he wonders what he is going to do, but Colin has prepared a list of people he needs to invite, and the things that he will need. As he checks out the list, he sees Corgino's name, and he wonders why he should invite him. But Colin says that since he is a high-ranking noble, it would be bad not to invite him. Cain wonders why the king isn't on the list, and Colin tells him that only high-ranking nobles are allowed to invite him. He thinks about preparing the food and drinks for the party, but panics because he also needs to get a gift for all his guests. But Sylvia gives him some ideas, and he creates a glass using his magic. Most people are used to just using porcelain, so he decides to give out glasses to all of his guests. He moves on to preparing the food. Using a recipe from his previous life, he comes up with the Hamburg steak, and Sylvia finds it to be absolutely delicious. She tries his drink next, and she is amazed by its fizzy bubbles, wondering what it is, and Cain explains how he used his magic to add bubbles to regular wine. Colin interrupts, telling Cain he is being called by the king. At the palace, the king is mad at him because he never got an invite to his party, and we learn that the Duke has been taunting him for not getting an invitation. Cain comes up with an excuse, saying that he just wanted to give him his invitation in person, and he just hasn't had the chance until now. The king is overjoyed hearing this, and Cain is relieved. The night of the party arrives, and Cain welcomes all his guests. The Duke arrives with Silk, and they are amazed by the red dragon. Cain thanks all his guests for joining him, and he makes a toast. Everyone is amazed by the drink, and the Duke comments on how the glass shines like a treasure. The king arrives, and he tells everyone to just enjoy themselves. He tries out the sparkling wine, and finds it absolutely delightful. He is served the Hamburg steak next, and he finds it rich and juicy, and there is even a cheese surprise in the middle. The queen comes rushing out, wondering what's up with his toilet, calling it revolutionary, and demanding one for the palace. The king tries it out himself, and immediately demands Cain to install one in the palace. The king compliments him on his hospitality, and all the nobles applaud him. But at that moment, Colin tells him that Corgino is arriving. Corgino rudely approaches, calling the house small, but is shocked when he sees the red dragon. He heads into the dining room, looking down on everyone else. They serve him the sparkling wine, which catches him off guard, but he pretends not to like it. He tries the Hamburg steak next, and calls it disgusting, but he can't stop himself from eating it. He demands more sauce, snatching it from Sylvia, and Cain is annoyed at his behavior, but Colin tells him he shouldn't cause a scene. But Cain has an idea, thinking things will be fine as long as he isn't the one causing the scene. Cain offers Corgino the glasses as a gift, but Corgino demands he hand over all of his glasses. Cain apologizes, saying that the glasses are his gift to everyone, but he says he has a bigger surprise for him. Corgino gets excited, but it turns out to be the king. Corgino is shocked to see him there, and the king tells him his behavior was unacceptable, when he should be leading by example as a high-ranking noble. Corgino runs away, and Silk finds it amusing how Cain set him up. However, the king realizes that Cain used him, and he ends up lecturing him for hours. Cain visits the barracks, where he runs into Vice Captain Gazard. He explains that he was told he could leave his monster materials there, so Gazard takes him to a warehouse where he can leave the materials. However, Cain says the room isn't big enough, and Gazard thinks he must have something big, like the red dragon at his mansion. But Cain says it's nothing as impressive, saying it's just an earth dragon. But Gazard is just as shocked, saying that it would take a whole party of A-rank adventurers just to take one out. They head out into the courtyard, and Cain takes out all of the monsters from his item box. Gazard can't believe how many monsters there are, but these are really just his A-rank monsters, and he secretly still has S-rank monsters in his box, after the gods just gave him too much power. Gazard wonders if Cain is a hero or a disciple of the gods, but Cain just says he's an ordinary boy, and Gazard decides not to ask too many questions. He tells Cain it will take a while to appraise all the monsters, and Cain says he can come back whenever they are ready. As he goes to leave, Gazard stops him, asking him to help train the knights, and says that he wants to show him off to his captain. Gazard introduces Cain to the knights, as the hero who defeated 30 orcs to save the princess. Cain wonders where the captain is, and Gazard says the captain will probably arrive as soon as the mock battles begin. Cain imagines the captain as a scary monster, but Gazard tells him not to worry. He decides to start the mock battle, but one of the knights speaks out, feeling bad because Cain is just a child, so Gazard tells the knight to go first. The knight gives Cain the first move for free, telling him to show him what he can do. Cain uses his boost spell, dashing at him, and instantly disarming the knight. The knight immediately admits defeat, and Cain thinks he overdid it. He tries to end things, but Gazard grabs onto him, telling him to take on all the knights at once. But the fight is stopped, as the captain Tefana jumps onto the scene. She wonders why her knights are picking on a child, hugging Cain, and telling him that everything is going to be okay, thinking he is just a lost child who wandered in. She demands an explanation from Gazard, and he explains that Cain is actually the hero who defeated 30 orcs. Hearing this, Tefana's expression immediately changes, as she becomes excited to meet him, and she challenges him to a duel. Gazard tells her to introduce herself first, but she says they will get to know each other with their swords. The knights think that even Cain doesn't stand a chance, because Tefana has the title of Master Swordsman. They prepare to fight, but Cain says he only has a wooden sword, but Tefana attacks him anyway. She uses her boost skill, charging at Cain, and the two exchange blows. The knights are shocked to see Cain keeping up with the captain. The two seem evenly matched, but Cain boosts his speed even more, getting behind the captain and winning the duel. Tefana becomes emotional with the result, and immediately decides that she will marry him. Everyone is shocked, and Cain says it's too soon since he is only 10 years old, and he doesn't even know anything about her. So Tefana introduces herself. Besides being the captain of the Royal Knights, she is an honorary viscount and daughter of a duke from the northern forest. She tells him not to worry about age, since she is an elf, who will live at least 300 years, so her looks won't change for a long time, but Cain thinks that was not the problem. Cain hides behind Gazard, saying that marriage is a big decision, and they can't just decide things on their own so easily, especially since he is already engaged to Telestia and Silk. He cries for Gazard's help, but he just pretends to be sleeping. Tefana agrees that they can't decide things on their own, so she tells Gazard to arrange an audience with the king, but Cain thinks that telling the king would be a terrible idea, but he has no choice, and gets dragged along with them. They have a meeting with the king, who wonders why Cain has come to visit. Tefana announces that she wants to marry Cain, and the king asks what happened. Cain explains that he beat Tefana in a duel, and that was what led to her proposing to him. The king asks him if he has told her about his other engagements, but Cain says he wasn't able to, since it's meant to be a secret. The king explains that elves used to be kidnapped and enslaved for their beauty, but their first king changed things and made peace with the elves. The elf nation was taken in and put under the protection of the kingdom, and he reveals that Tefana is essentially their princess. The king tells Tefana that Cain is already engaged to Telestia and Silk. She seems disappointed to learn this, but as he starts to apologize, Tefana says that it only makes her want him even more. The king acknowledges her feelings, but tells her she needs to write a letter to her father to get his permission. Tefana leaves to write her letter, but drags Cain away so they can fight some more. After they leave, the king is surprised Cain was able to beat Tefana, and he wonders how he could be so strong at such a young age. Gazard mentions Cain's reaction when he asked if he was a disciple of the gods, and the prime minister thinks they should test him by using a certain book. A few days later, Cain is exhausted, and he runs into Gazard again, who asks him why he looks so tired. Cain explains that Tefana has been forcing him on countless dates, which are really just the two of them fighting. Gazard thanks him for helping Tefana get stronger, and Cain reveals he has also gained the Master Swordsman title. They suddenly hear Tefana's voice, and Cain tries to run, but Gazard drags him away, saying the king wants to see him. Cain thinks he is in trouble, but the king shows him a book that contains emperor-level magic, passed down in the royal family, which is said to have been written by the first king. Cain checks it out, and is amazed to see there is another level of magic, but the king reveals that no one is able to read the book, because it's actually written in Japanese. Cain realizes he messed up, thinking that the first king must have also been someone who was reincarnated from Japan. The king asks about Cain's identity, and he realizes he can't hide the truth any longer, so he explains how he was reincarnated with the memories from his previous life. Gorm wonders if he is really his son, and Cain claims that he is, because the gods told him that was the case. Everyone is shocked to hear he met the gods, and he recalls how he met the 7 gods during his baptism. The king can't believe he met all 7 gods, and they ask him to show his status. Cain opens his real status window, shocking everyone as they see his level 10 blessings and his title as God's Chosen. The king thinks that with his title as God's Chosen, everyone in the world would bow to him. But Cain doesn't want that to happen, saying that he is happy with how things are in his life, with the adventures he's had, and the people he has met, so he wants them to just treat him the same as before. The king agrees to his request, but jokes that he could be king if he wanted. Tefana interrupts the meeting, revealing the letter from her father, agreeing to let her marry Cain, so she grabs Cain and takes him away, heading straight to the courtyard. Meanwhile, the king orders everyone to keep what they learned about Cain a secret, hoping that he will continue to protect the country, as well as their people. Later on, we see Telestia and Silk after they find out about his engagement to Tefana. They are mad at him at first, but they manage to accept the news, and they tell him not to accept all the proposals that he will receive, wondering how many people they will have to share him with. Tefana bursts in looking for him, wanting to share their love together, and the girls wonder what he has been doing with her. But he gets dragged away as he tries to explain himself. Later on, Cain has another look at the first king's book, and there is a message that says if he can read the book, then he must also be from another world, so it's a record of his own experience. The king is introduced as Yuya Esford, a man who also died in an accident, but he was summoned to the world in his original body. Cain is suddenly interrupted, as Telestia and Silk wonder what he is up to. They think he must be studying for the academy entrance exams, and they ask to study with him. But he tells them he is too busy, so they ask him about the following day, but he says that is even worse for him, and he quickly runs away. However, he ends up running into Tefana, who asks him to fight with her the next day, but he apologizes to her and runs away from her as well. The next day, it turns out to be his 12th birthday, and he is finally old enough to register as an adventurer, so he heads straight for the guild. He looks around the place, and he is impressed by the capital's guild. He runs into an adventurer, who can tell it's his first time, so he reminds him to stay safe, because he only has one life. As he walks off, Cain gets a feeling he has seen him before. He goes up to the counter, and the clerk introduces herself as Tia. Cain asks to register as an adventurer, and she tells him to fill out a form. As he fills it out, he wonders if he should mention he is a baron, but he decides to leave it out, thinking it shouldn't make a difference. After filling it out, Tia tells him to put a drop of his blood on the crystal, so he can register for his guild card. She tells him he starts off in G rank, and he thinks about his tutors, who mention that they were in D rank. As Tia is explaining things to him, some adventurers interrupt, telling her to stop wasting her time with a kid. The man tells Cain to go home to his mother, trying to kick him, but Cain easily dodges. His friend tries to attack as well, but Cain avoids him as well. He makes a fool of them, and the man prepares to draw his sword. But things are stopped, as the red-haired adventurer from earlier appears, and the man recognizes him as Claude, from the Ice Flame party. Claude asks if he wants to fight, and the men run off instead. Cain thanks Claude for his help, and Claude can tell he is strong, seeing the way he avoided the attacks from the men. They have a drink together, and Cain gets juiced since he is still a kid. Claude is interested in how he is so strong at such an age, and Cain tells him he was tutored when he was younger. Cain asks him why the men mentioned Ice Flame, and Claude reveals it's the name of his party, where he fights with a flaming sword, and his wife uses ice magic. He recommends Cain find a party, so that he can take on bigger quests and rank up faster, revealing his gold card, which means he is an A-ranked adventurer. Cain is impressed seeing the card, but Claude says there's room to improve, mentioning that the first king was triple S ranked, and his card was supposedly black. Claude suddenly gets hit, as his wife Lena suddenly appears. She wonders why he is drinking, and Cain introduces himself, saying that Claude saved him. She finds him cute, even offering to help him if he gets into any more trouble, but she drags Claude away, saying they need to get on with their quest. Cain checks out the quest board, and sees one for transporting cargo. He thinks it would be easy with his item box, but he decides he wants a quest that involves defeating monsters. He finds a quest to defeat goblins, and there is no limit to how many he can defeat, so he thinks it's the perfect first quest for him. But he suddenly runs into Tefana, and Desart explains they are headed out to do some training with the knights. Tefana wonders what he is up to, and Cain says he is about to go on his first quest as an adventurer. Tefana decides to go with him, saying she can't miss her husband's first adventure, and she leaves the training exercise up to Gazard. Cain tries to run, but Tefana grabs him and drags him off. They head into the forest, and Tefana enjoys her time with him, dragging him along and wondering where the goblins are at. Cain uses his search skill, detecting the goblins up ahead, and they see a man surrounded by goblins. They quickly rush to the man, and Cain heals him with his magic. Tefana rushes at the goblins, easily cutting them down, but there are more goblins that appear. Cain uses his magic to boost her strength, and she feels as though they are fighting as one. She easily cuts them all down, but there is a giant goblin that appears. But thanks to Cain's magic, it's no match for her, and she cuts it in half. She starts dreaming about their wedding, asking Cain to praise her, but there are suddenly green lizards that appear. Cain tells her to get away with the man, telling her to leave them to him. He uses his light spell to blind them, and then follows up with his ice pillar. Gigantic ice pillars emerge, and the man wonders what's going on, but Tefana knows it's just Cain being Cain. Sometime later, we see Cain's tutors as they investigate the green lizards, but there is only a huge crater left behind. Cain reports to the guild, and he wonders if he can hand in the green lizards, even though he didn't take the quest. Tia is shocked to hear this, because a green lizard quest is usually C-ranked, and Cain reveals that he defeated 30 of them. Tia can't believe it, and she rushes to the chief and tells him what happened. The chief meets with Cain, introducing himself as Cedric, mentioning that the guild master is busy, so he is handling his case. He thinks Cain is trying to cheat the system, because he only just registered as an adventurer, and he thinks it would be impossible for him to kill a green lizard. Cain insists that he beat them, but Cedric thinks he is just a peasant trying to cheat the guild out of the reward money. He decides to punish Cain by revoking his guild card, saying that he doesn't tolerate cheaters, but the guild master suddenly enters. Cedric explains the situation, saying there is no way Cain could have defeated 30 green lizards. But the guild master laughs, telling Cedric there is much for him to learn. Cedric can't believe he is siding with Cain, but the guild master calls in his guest, which turns out to be Tefana. She hugs onto Cain, calling him her husband, while Tia and Cedric are shocked to hear this. Cain wonders what she is doing at the guild, and she explains she was there to discuss the city's countermeasures against goblins and green lizards. The guild master mentions that Cain is a baron and the hero who saved the princess, but Cedric can't believe it, saying there was no mention of it on his registry form. But Cain says he left it out because he didn't want any special treatment. The guild master mentions that if Cain marries Tefana, then he will also be his brother-in-law, which is a shock to Cain, learning that he is Tefana's brother. Cedric begs for forgiveness, and Tefana mentions he should be executed for insulting a noble, but Cain accepts his apology, warning him not to assume things so quickly. Cain asks if they will take his green lizards, and the guild master decides to promote him to C rank. But Tefana says it's not enough, mentioning how he is stronger than her, and even defeated a red dragon when he was 10, so the guild master decides to make him A rank instead, although he mentions that Cain will need to subjugate some bandits. Tia and Cedric can't believe he is being promoted to A rank in a single day, and the guild master tells them to handle the paperwork. After they leave, the guild master apologizes for Cedric's behavior, but Cain tells him not to worry. The guild master admits he was worried when he heard his sister got engaged, but he is relieved after meeting him, and he tells him to take care of his sister. Meanwhile, we see the gods watching him, laughing at all the trouble he's causing. They wonder if it was a mistake to make him so strong, but Xenom says he needs to get even stronger, revealing that a being named Aaron is about to be released from his seal. He was sealed away 300 years ago, and the gods fear what will happen when he gets free. So they think Cain needs to get even stronger, thinking he needs to train with a certain master to reach the next level. Back at the palace, the girls ask to study with him again, but Tefana suddenly enters, saying she enjoyed their date in the forest, and that they should go to the beach next time. So the girls realize that he turned them down the other day, only to end up on a date with Tefana instead. They tell him he needs to take them on dates as well, and all he can do is apologize to them. We see Cain in bed, as Sylvia bursts in, apologizing because she forgot to wake him up, and we learn that today is the day of his academy entrance exams. Cain rushes out the door, as Sylvia continues to apologize, but he tells her not to worry, because he's not going to be late. As he gets outside, he uses a teleportation spell to get to the academy. He checks in for the exam, and he is given directions to his room. As he heads over, he finds it strange he doesn't recognize anyone on the list. When he gets to the room, he wonders if Telestia and Silk are taking the exam in another room. The examiner comes in and tells them they have 2 hours to complete the test, warning them that any cheaters will be immediately removed. The test begins, and it's just basic math and writing skills, which Cain finds easy, thanks to his knowledge from his previous life. During the test, the examiner sees him relaxing, but he says he is already finished, which surprises her because it's only been 30 minutes. After the test ends, they are told they will be moving on to the magic assessment, which gets Cain excited. They head out into the courtyard, and the examiner tells them they are to use their strongest spell at the target. Cain wonders if it will be okay to use his full power, and the examiner tells him the area is protected by a defensive barrier, so he can use any magic that he wants. We see a boy as he starts to chant and create a fireball, but it's so weak that it surprises Cain. Another student goes, and she is just as weak, making Cain realize that this is the level that most 12-year-olds are at. He was planning to use his Inferno spell, but realizes that would probably be a bad idea. When it's his turn, he creates a fireball which turns blue, and uses a fire bullet spell, but it ends up causing a huge explosion, blasting right through the wall. There is massive damage to the area, and Cain is confused, because he only used a beginner-level spell. The examiner can't believe her eyes, as Cain tries to explain himself. The examiner checks the area, and tells them to move on to their swordsmanship exam. They move to another part of the academy, where the examiner introduces some A-rank adventurers who are there to help assess them. Cain is surprised to see Claude, who wonders what he is up to, and Cain explains he is taking the entrance exam. Claude wants to be his opponent, but Cain tries to decline. However, the examiner says that Claude is the highest ranked adventurer, so he can't refuse. The two prepare to fight, and Claude tells him to show him what he can do. Cain thinks he should be pretty strong since he is A-ranked, so he uses his boost skill and starts to attack. The two start to exchange blows, and the other kids can't believe how fast they are moving. Claude is impressed by Cain, saying he is stronger than the other examiners, but Cain tells him to take it easy, since it's just a test. But Claude gets too excited, using his own boost skill, and they start moving even faster. But their fight gets interrupted as the examiner tells them to stop, saying they are scaring the other kids. Claude thinks they went a little overboard, and decides to call it for the day, but tells Cain they should go on a quest together sometime, but Cain isn't sure that's a good idea. The examiner says he has seen enough, and tells Cain to go home and wait for the results. He heads back home, and Sylvia wonders how he did. He says everything went well, and Sylvia wants to have a party to celebrate. He says it's still too early to celebrate, but his stomach growls, and Sylvia rushes off to prepare him some food. At the palace, we see Cain as he is questioned by the king about the damage that he caused. Cain explains how the examiner told him he could use his full power since there was a barrier, but even though he only used beginner magic, instead of his new emperor-level magic, it still caused massive damage. The king is surprised he can use emperor-level magic, but Cain says he's not sure what would happen to his surroundings if he used it, asking if there is anywhere he could practice, but they tell him absolutely not. The king goes on to ask him where he took his exam, because Telestia complained that she didn't see him during the exam. Cain mentions how he checked in at the south entrance, and was directed to his room. Upon hearing this, the king asks him why the academy has a north and south entrance, causing Cain to realize his mistake, because the north entrance leads to where the nobles live, and he ended up taking the exam with all the commoners instead. The Duke mentions how this even caused a problem with the academy headmaster, as we see in a flashback, the headmaster telling him there is a problem with releasing the results, because a commoner got a perfect score on the written exam, as well as destroying the training area, and fighting on equal footing with an A-ranked adventurer, but the Duke just laughs hearing this, knowing it could only be Cain, and tells the headmaster to release the results. At the academy, the results are released, and Cain looks for his name. Silk calls out to him, telling him he is at the top of the class, while Telestia is second, and she is in third place. She teases him about the damage he caused, and tells him how Telestia was mad she didn't see him, making him worried he is in trouble. He suddenly sees his sister Rain, who is guiding some other students. She rushes over to him, overjoyed to see him. She is impressed he is the top of his class, and wishes him luck on his speech, saying that it's tradition for the top scoring student to give a speech at the entrance ceremony. Cain wishes Telestia could do it instead, but Rain tells him he doesn't have a choice. Cain returns home, and Sylvia is overjoyed to learn he passed, saying they need to celebrate, and that she will cook enough food to feed 100 people. She rushes off, and Cain thinks she is going overboard, but he thinks it's a good occasion to be happy. On the day of the entrance ceremony, Cain sees that his parents have come to watch him. He is joined by Telestia and Silk, charming them instantly, as they think he looks cute in his uniform. As the ceremony begins, The other students wonder who he is, jealous that he's sitting between the two girls. The headmaster calls Cain up to give his speech, and he introduces himself, mentioning how he got his exam mixed up, but looks forward to becoming friends with everyone, hoping they can all get along, and all the students cheer for him. The king comes out to congratulate all the students, mentioning certain irregular students, and Cain feels like he is being warned by the king. They get to their first class, and their homeroom teacher introduces herself as Elka. She tells them to think about their future and choose what they plan on studying. Cain wants to go for adventuring, but the girls object. Telestia says that since he is already a baron, he needs to learn more about being a noble. Cain gets upset, but Silk tells him he can choose more than one course. So Cain decides to go with nobility, adventuring, and magic. He asks what they are going to choose, and Telestia says she will pick nobility and internal affairs. Cain wonders why she is picking internal affairs, but she mentions how she wants to help him manage his domain in the future. Silk decides on nobility and commerce, wanting to also be useful to him in the future. As they leave their class, Cain sees some bullies picking on a girl. He notices her ear and realizes it's Parma from the item shop. The bullies turn out to be Habit and his boys, and they bully her for being a beast, saying she doesn't belong in their class since they are all nobles. But Cain steps in, saying nobles and commoners are equals at the school. Habit doesn't care, but soon realizes he is talking to Cain, remembering their past encounter. The boys wonder why he is siding with a commoner when he is a noble himself, but Cain says he is just siding with his friend. Habit threatens to tell his father to ruin Parma's family, but the girls approach, causing the boys to get on their knees and apologize. They are forced to apologize to Parma, and they quickly get away. Parma thanks Cain for his help, but the girls suddenly wonder about his relationship with her, making Cain kneel as they have a chat with Parma. He gets worried they are forming an alliance, but he suddenly hears a voice, telling him to visit the library. Cain decides to check it out, but as he opens the door, it leads to another space, and he is teleported to a room where he meets a man, who asks him if he wants some coffee. Cain demands to know who he is, wondering how there is coffee in this world. But the man says he has been waiting for him, calling him Kazuya, his name from his previous life. The man introduces himself as Yuya, and Cain recognizes him as the first king. He remembers the book he read, but remembers it was written more than 300 years ago, so he wonders if he is a ghost. But Yuya just laughs, and tells him he can check his stats. Cain opens up his status window, and is shocked when he sees he has the God of Creation title. Yuya explains they are in another world that he created, so he is considered a god, and maintains his appearance even after 300 years. He goes on to explain how he spoke with Xenum, and how the other gods wanted him to help with his training. Cain thinks he is already too strong, so Yuya tells him to take a cookie from him. Cain gives it a go, but Yuya easily stops him, saying he has a long way to go. Cain wonders why he needs to get stronger, and Yuya reveals he needs to fight Eren, the evil god. He explains that 300 years ago, Eren made people all over the world fight and kill each other by using an oracle, sowing distrust in everyone's subconscious and making them fight. But together with his companions, they managed to seal him away, but the seal has since loosened, and he will soon be resurrected. Cain asks why he can't just seal him again, but Yuya says since he became a god, he can no longer directly interfere in the world, just like the other gods. Yuya also mentions that Cain's previous life is important, but they suddenly teleport to the sea. Yuya throws him a sword, and says he will tell him more if he can complete his training. He gives him a compass to follow, which he says will lead him back to the house where they were. He tells Cain to level up, saying he would need to get to at least 600 to stand a chance against Eren. Cain thinks it will take forever, since he is only around level 300, so he worries about missing school. But Yuya tells him that 1 year in this world is equal to only 1 day in the other world. Yuya wishes him luck and disappears, and Cain realizes he has no other choice, so he starts heading back to the house. As he enters the forest, he is instantly attacked by a range of deadly monsters. Meanwhile, in the other world, Telestia and Silk pay a visit to Cain's mansion, wondering about Cain because he didn't go to school. Sylvia also gets worried, thinking he could be in some kind of trouble, but Telestia has faith in him, and decides to stay over and wait for him to return. We see Cain as he is caught by a beast, and is completely exhausted, but he manages to blast it with his magic, falling to the ground. We learn he has already spent months in the forest, and he wonders if he will ever get back. He suddenly hears a cry, and he gets up out of instinct, dragging himself over to the sound, and he finds an injured beast lying on the ground. He thinks about putting it out of its misery, but as he is about to do it, he suddenly remembers how he always just wanted to protect someone, so he forces himself to use all the magic that he has to heal the beast. But this ends up causing him to pass out. The beast protects him from the other monsters, and when Cain wakes up, it jumps on him and starts licking him. Thinking that it's also all alone, Cain asks it to join him, and he ends up naming it Haku. Together with Haku, he manages to keep his sanity, remembering he can't give up no matter what, because he has something to protect. After some time, he finally makes it back to the house, and Yuya welcomes him back, commenting on how big he's gotten, and we learn 4 years have passed. He is also surprised to see Haku, mentioning that it's a holy beast, and suggests they could form a contract. Cain gives it a go, and Haku disappears, but Yuya says he can now summon him whenever he wants. Yuya goes on to introduce him to his next teacher Durin. Durin tells him he's still not strong enough, because Eren is even stronger than Yuya, who is stronger than him, so Cain needs to first defeat him. Cain uses his boost skill, but Durin dodges his attack, knocking him out with a single punch. When Cain wakes up, he finds he was taken in by Durin, and he meets his wife Ruri. They also have a pet dragon named Jin, and Cain is excited to see it, wanting to be its friend, but Haku jumps on him, and doesn't seem to like the dragon. Cain joins them for a meal, and he starts to cry, because it's the first time he has gotten to eat real food in 4 years. Meanwhile, we see Telestia and Silk baking. They are worried about Cain, but are learning how to bake, wanting to make him happy when he returns. Cain keeps on fighting with Durin, and he gets beaten up every day. After training for a year, Cain is still getting beaten up, and Durin wonders how he will be able to defeat Eren. But Cain thinks back to his talk with Yuya, where he explains Eren used to be the god of amusement in the other world. Cain is shocked to learn there used to be 8 gods, and Yuya tells him how Eren used an oracle to force everyone in the world into a death game, and if he returns, the death game will happen again, and everyone Cain knows will get caught up in it. Cain uses this as motivation to continue his training. Yuya also goes on to reveal the reason that Eren is linked to his past life is because Eren killed his parents. We learn that his parents Seiya and Megumi were also killed in a car accident and summoned as heroes to the world. The gods were unable to interfere directly, so they tasked the 3 of them with stopping Eren, giving them an orb that could seal him away. They fight against Eren, but he is unaffected by Megumi's magic, so Yuya and Seiya charge at him, attacking with their swords, and even managing to cut his arm, but Eren retaliates with his magic, which ends up killing Megumi. Seiya activates his ultimate skill, charging at Eren, but he ends up getting stabbed. However, Yuya takes this chance, and manages to seal him, but at the cost of Seiya's life. As Cain thinks about saving those dear to him, he manages to overpower Durin, and he finally completes his training. Cain visits his parents' graves, and Yuya says how they were always worried about him. Cain thanks Yuya for looking after his parents, and Yuya shows him the cookie, which he manages to grab this time, and Yuya acknowledges his growth. Yuya suggests having some coffee, but Cain is eager to get back to the other world. Yuya points out how different he looks, but he uses his power to revert his appearance. Yuya tells him to take care of Haku, and Durin tells him to take Jin to see the other world as well, so Cain forms a contract with it. Cain thanks them both for looking after him, and he prepares to go back to the other world. But Yuya throws him a sword, telling him to give it to the king, and Cain teleports away. He reappears back at his mansion, and the girls are overjoyed to see him. He apologizes for making them worry, but Telestia says they had faith he would return, so they even learn how to make cookies for when he got back. They welcome him home, and Cain is glad to have them in his life, as he digs into the cookies. Cain meets with the king, and explains how he met with Yuya in another world. The king finds it hard to believe, but Cain shows off the sword that Yuya gave to him, and they instantly recognize it, so they believe his story. The king reads a letter from Yuya, and learns Cain was trained by him. Cain recounts his grueling training, of how he was left in the forest with vicious monsters, and how he got beaten up every day for 5 years. The king is shocked, wondering how he trained for 5 years, but the duke just finds him amusing as normal. The duke mentions that while he was gone, the guild was looking for him, because he hasn't taken any quests since he became A-ranked, so they might have to cancel his registration. Kane gets worried hearing this, and immediately heads to the guild. He meets with the guild master, wondering what's going on, and the master explains that when he was promoted to A-rank, he was told he would need to subjugate some bandits. Kane mentions how he has been busy starting at the academy, but the master tells him there is a time limit for him to complete the quest, or else his registration will be cancelled. Seeing he has no other choice, Kane accepts it right away, and the master tells him about a group of bandits that have been causing trouble along a road toward the capital. He mentions there are around 10 bandits in the group, but he thinks Kane should have no problem since he is the strongest person in the city. Kane teleports over to the road, and he casts Fly, so he can search for the bandits from up above. He sees the bandits as they are trying to rob a carriage, so he quickly goes to help. But he soon discovers his tutors Nina and Millie are the ones escorting the carriage, and their client is Parma's father. He notices Millie is injured, so he quickly heals her with his magic. The bandits think he is just a kid, looking down on him, and they start laughing, but Kane prepares to make them pay for injuring Millie. The bandits charge at him, but he easily defeats them while barely touching them. One of them jumps at him, but he sends the man flying. He goes on to take the rest of them out, and he comments on how hard it is to hold back his strength, but the girls think he is too strong. All the bandits are caught, and Millie wonders why he suddenly showed up. He explains how he was just on a subjugation quest, but the girls are shocked hearing this, because subjugation quests are only for C-ranked adventurers and higher, and he should have only just registered. Kane reveals how he is already A-ranked, and the girls can't believe he skipped right past the C and B ranks. The bandits end up getting taken back to town in a cage, and the group goes to Tamani's item shop to drop off Parma's father. Parma comes out to see her father, and she is happy to see Kane. She is surprised to see the bandits, and she thinks how it's their day off school, but he is still working so hard. She thinks he would also be busy as a baron, and Millie is surprised by his promotion, wondering if she should be more formal towards him, but Kane tells them he will always see them as his master, and they can just keep calling him by his name. Millie thinks he has grown so much, thinking he seems like an adult now, but Kane slips away, saying he needs to get back to report to the guild, as he runs off, but the girls chase after him. Kane goes to turn in his quest, and Tia is surprised he is already finished. She is about to go tell the guildmaster, but some adventurers start harassing the two girls. The girls try to ignore them, and the man tries to grab Millie, but he gets stopped by Kane. The men realize who he is, remembering their past encounter, and they become terrified, falling to the ground. Claude appears, wondering what's the commotion, and Kane is happy to see him. The thugs run away, and Claude is surprised to see him with Millie, revealing she is actually his younger sister. Kane can't believe the coincidence, and the group has some drinks together. Claude wonders what they were doing together, and Millie explains how Kane saved them and easily took out all the bandits, mentioning how he is already A-ranked. Claude is surprised hearing this, thinking it's only been a few days since he registered, but remembers how Kane was able to keep up with him during their mock fight. Millie wonders how he got so strong, causing Kane to panic, because he can't tell them how he was trained by the gods. But Millie remembers how he took out a red dragon even as a kid, so she just thinks he has always been this strong. Claude is impressed, thinking red dragons are SS ranked, and the girls also show off the magic bags that Kane made for them. Lena demands to know how much they can hold, and Millie says she doesn't really know since she has never been able to fill it, but mentions how Kane told them it could fit an entire mansion, and Lena gets jealous, thinking they are National Treasure class items. She pesters Kane for one as well, and he ends up promising to make one for her. As she thanks him, she actually falls asleep, and Claude reveals she can't hold her liquor very well. Kane suddenly thinks about how he missed school for an entire week, so he needs to make sure he doesn't miss any more classes. Claude wonders why he is going to school when he is already a baron, but Kane says there's still a lot he doesn't know. Nina thinks he is a good kid, offering him a hug, but Kane quickly runs off. At that moment, Tia appears, mentioning the adventurer who was meant to teach at the academy got injured, and Claude becomes interested, wanting to help Kane out. The next day at the academy, Cain attends his magic class, where they are practicing their spells on the targets. Cain gets excited, wanting to try out the new spells that he learned from Yuya, but the teacher calls him out, telling him he isn't allowed to use any attacking spells, because even when he used beginner magic last time, he ended up destroying the academy's barrier. Cain can't believe it, and his friends watch on, thinking he doesn't fit in with the rest of his class, so they come up with a plan to give him a hand. In Cain's adventuring class, the teacher tells him their instructor got injured, so he introduces Claude and the others as guest instructors for the class. The students recognize Claude and Lena, and Claude begins by asking all the students to take out their guild cards. We see all the students have bronze cards, since they are all newly registered. Claude wants Cain to show off his gold card, but Cain thinks it's a bad idea, thinking it would only make him more isolated from the other students, so he pretends he forgot his card. The class moves outdoors, and Claude starts training the students one by one. Cain gets excited, thinking he will finally be able to show what he can do, but Claude keeps fighting the other students instead. Cain gets ignored and isolated, but this is all part of Claude's plan. They want to first show how strong they are to the other students, and when Cain is able to keep up with him, the other students will be impressed by his strength, and he will become the hero of the class. Cain gets anxious waiting, but another student tells him to get in line. Claude beats up all the other students, and Cain is the last one to go. They start to fight, but the bell rings, and their teacher tells them time is up. Cain is disappointed he didn't get to fight, but Claude apologizes for messing up the time. Claude promises to fight him next time, but Cain's teacher mentions how the school doesn't have the budget to invite Claude again, since a lot of their money was spent repairing the wall and barrier that he destroyed. All the students thank them for the training, but Cain is left devastated that he didn't get a turn. At night, Cain gets pissed off thinking about Claude, and he goes on a rampage throughout the forest. He comes across a dragon, but he easily takes it out with a single slash, and he rains fire down into the forest, causing a huge explosion, and the guards report that they must be getting attacked by the Prince of Darkness. They sound the alarm, and we see Garm rushing out to investigate it. Cain calms down after blowing off some steam, and he teleports home, leaving behind his handkerchief, and when his father arrives, he only finds an enormous hole, and he is shocked seeing the handkerchief. The next day, Cain is called by the king, who tells him about what his father found. They suggest it's the work of the Prince of Darkness, thinking they need to contact other countries to prepare, but Cain comes clean, admitting that it was him. The king reprimands him, and when he gets home, his father also lectures him. Meanwhile, in a distant cave, we see a fragment of Aaron as it gets picked up by a goblin and then swallowed by a dragon. The dragon becomes possessed, and Aaron takes over it, realizing that the seal on him has weakened, and he has regained some of his power, swearing to get his revenge on the other gods. At the academy, Cain's class is learning about summoning magic. The teacher calls him out, and he thinks he is being told to study by himself, but she tells him that since they are not practicing attack magic, he is allowed to participate. Cain gets excited, and their teacher introduces their instructor Grat, a mage from the palace. Grat explains there are two types of summoning magic. The first is when you establish a bond with a monster and form a contract with it, and the second way is to summon a monster from a magic circle. Grat tells them they will be practicing the magic circle summoning, and he hands out talismans to them. The students start summoning all kinds of different creatures, trying to form contracts with them. One student manages to summon a giant beast, but it refuses to form a contract and disappears. Grat explains he didn't have enough magic power to make the monster submit, but compliments the boy for being able to summon such a monster in the first place. After all the other students are finished, Grat tells Cain it's his turn. Cain gets ready to put all his magic into the circle, but he worries about summoning a crazy monster like he did when he was young. However, Grat tells him not to worry, saying the monster will just disappear if he can't form a contract, so he tells Cain to give it all he's got. Cain gets excited, putting all of his magic into the circle, but Grat starts to panic, because there's just too much magic, and even Cain is blown away. A demon appears, and it wonders how a human managed to summon him, the Prince of Darkness. Cain panics hearing this, and quickly casts Flash to blind everyone else. Cain wonders if the demon is an ally of Aaron, and the demon looks down on him since he is human. It uses his ability to check out Cain's status, and he starts to approach Cain. Cain prepares for a fight, but it immediately submits to him, after seeing how strong he is, and offers to become his underling. Cain is surprised, and the demon says he is happy to form a contract with him, saying he would do anything for him, even if it was to destroy an entire nation, but Cain says he wouldn't ask for something like that. The demon introduces himself as Seth, the Prince of Darkness, and he tells Cain he can summon him whenever he wants. The demon disappears, and Grat asks about the demon that showed up, but Cain claims he wasn't able to form a contract with it, and it just disappeared. Grat buys his story, and Cain is relieved he managed to cover it up, but Grat ends up reporting the incident to the king. The king interrogates Cain, and he is forced to admit he summoned the Prince of Darkness, which causes them all to freak out, because if it decided to go on a rampage, it could destroy the capital in a blink of an eye. Cain apologizes, saying all he did was put his magic into the circle. Grat wonders just how much magic he has to be able to summon the Prince of Darkness, and the king thinks it must have been because of the training he received from the first king. He asks to see Cain's status, and he warns Grat not to speak of anything that he sees. Cain opens his status window, and they are shocked to see he now has the title of demigod, and his status has become immeasurable. The king wonders what the heck is going on, and Grat bows down to him, calling him a god. The duke thinks they should start calling him master, and the king worries he has the power to destroy the entire world. But Cain says he has no intention of doing anything like that, telling them to just treat him as they normally would. The king decides to promote him to a viscount, giving him an entire town, and decides to publicly announce his engagement to the princess. Back at his house, Sylvia congratulates him on his promotion, wondering which area he will be given, and he mentions it should be a town near the capital. Sylvia thinks they should celebrate, but Colin suddenly brings news that his brother witnessed an onslaught in the forest of monsters. Cain immediately heads back to Gracia and visits his family home, where he meets with his brother. His brother tells him there has been a vast increase in the number of adventurers being attacked in the forest over the past few months, so he sent out high-ranking adventurers to look into it, and they reported that the number of monsters in the forest has grown, and they have become savage. His brother mentions an onslaught incident from a few decades back, where monsters suddenly turned savage and attacked the city. Looking at the records, the current behavior of the monsters is quite similar, so he thinks it could be another onslaught. But since they don't have real evidence, they can't send all their men on a massive scale. Cain decides to go investigate the forest, but his brother worries about him, thinking he is still young, but Cain shows off his gold card, telling him not to worry, and reminding him of how he defeated a red dragon in the past. So his brother thanks him for his help. Cain heads over to the Adventurers Guild, and the clerk looks down on him since he is just a kid, but she is shocked when she sees his gold card, and another clerk named Rudy asks Cain to forgive the girl since she is new. She wonders what he is after, and Cain wants to know more about the forest. Rudy explains the monsters have become increasingly savage, and there are more signs it could be an onslaught. At that moment, Millie and Nina arrive at the guild, and Cain wonders what they are doing there. They mention that the guild put out a call for higher-ranked adventurers, and the monsters in the forest were too tough for just the two of them, so they were planning to meet up with Claude and Lena. Rudy wonders what Cain plans to do, and he says he wants to check out the forest first. Rudy thinks it's too dangerous for him to go alone, and since he is a noble, if anything happened to him, it would cause problems for the guild. Cain thinks he should be strong enough, but Rudy suggests he should find someone to go with. Cain has an idea, and he summons Haku and Jin to accompany him. They instantly jump onto him, but they soon notice something is up. Cain uses his search skill, and as he runs through the forest, he gets the feeling he is being watched. He defeats a number of monsters, but the strange feeling doesn't disappear, so he summons Seth, who wonders who is disturbing him, but when he sees Cain, he quickly gets on his knees. Cain tells him about the strange feeling he's getting, and tells Seth to help him investigate the forest. Seth senses an overwhelming presence nearby, and notes that the monsters are also trying to reach it. Cain wants to know more, so Seth summons his servant Dalmatia. Dalmatia is surprised seeing Cain, and Seth explains he is their new master, calling him the god who will conquer the world, and Dalmatia worships him, but Cain complains, saying he isn't a god. Seth explains Dalmatia is an expert at investigation, and Dalmatia uses his special skill, which summons creatures that he spreads throughout the forest. The monsters start going wild, and Cain takes them out, which Dalmania is amazed at his strength. Cain easily takes out all the monsters, and he decides to leave the two to do the investigation while he heads back to the guild. His friends are shocked seeing all the S-ranked monsters, and they are joined by Claude and Lena. They wonder where the monsters came from, and Cain says they were from the forest. They get worried hearing this, and Cain thinks there are even stronger monsters deeper in the forest. Meanwhile, Dalmania learns there is something that's trying to intimidate them, warning them not to get any closer, but Seth thinks of it as a challenge. We see Aaron as he senses their approach, and the two find an enormous horde of monsters waiting in the forest. Aaron decides it's time to start his game, and he sends all the monsters to attack. Seth quickly teleports to warn Cain, and the ground shakes. The guards ring the alarm, and Seth informs Cain that the onslaught has begun. Cain tells Rudy to inform his brother, and he tells Claude to organize the adventurers to defend the town. He plans on going back into the forest, but Rudy tells him it's too dangerous. Cain tells them not to worry, since he has some friends that are quite strong, and Seth is touched being called a friend. And they start heading off, but Tefana suddenly arrives, hugging onto him, and she explains his father issued an emergency order. Tefana wants to follow him into the forest, but Cain tells her to help with defending his hometown. She tells him to leave it to her, and Cain quickly runs off with Seth. We see Dalmania fighting against the monsters, and he seems to be enjoying himself. A dragon appears behind him, but Seth takes it out, and Cain casts Inferno down onto the monsters. They turn their attention to the source, and they prepare to face Aaron, who seems to be waiting for them. Seth tells him to go on ahead, while he will try and handle the monsters. Cain wonders if he will be okay, and Seth says he will summon his underlings to help, but he warns they might destroy some of the forest. Cain tells him not to go overboard, but Seth says he should be more worried about himself, and Cain heads on. Meanwhile at the town, Tefana organizes the defenses, and Nina detects countless monsters approaching. Millie decides to head into the forest, saying that no matter how strong Cain is, he still might need their help. Nina agrees to go with her, and Claude and Lena think they can't let them go alone, so they all head off together. Seth summons his underlings, his 4 demon generals, and they wonder what is going on. They realize the situation, and Seth mentions he is helping a friend. They wonder who could have made such a request, and Dalmania tells them Seth has a new master. They are shocked hearing Seth entered a contract, wondering who it could be, and Dalmania tells them about Cain, calling him a demigod and God's chosen one. They can't believe what they are hearing, but Seth orders them all to help control the situation with the monsters. Meanwhile, we see Cain trying to take out as many monsters as he can, but there are just too many. He is suddenly attacked by a flame, but Cain manages to counter it with his own spell. A black dragon is revealed, and Cain recognizes it as Aaron. Aaron is disappointed he couldn't revive at full power, but he summons more monsters to attack the town. Cain tells him to stop, but Aaron calls it a game, wanting to see if the humans will get devoured by the monsters. We see Cain's friends in the forest, and they see the demon generals fighting against the monsters. They wonder who they could be, but they soon realize they must be friends of Cain. The demons aren't able to hold them all off, and Seth tells them they will have to rely on the humans. Meanwhile, Aaron recognizes Cain's eyes, thinking they look the same as the ones who sealed him, and Cain realizes he is talking about his parents. Aaron breathes fire at him, but he manages to avoid it and fight back with his Inferno spell. His attack lands, but Aaron tells him that such a weak attack won't work on him. Cain thinks he will need to use a stronger spell, but Aaron attacks him before he has the chance. Aaron chases after him, and Cain summons Haku and Jin to help him. They manage to knock Aaron down, but Haku gets hit by his tail, and Aaron focuses his breath on him. Meanwhile, Cain's friends are fighting against the monsters, but they eventually get tired and start to get overwhelmed. Claude struggles against a huge beast, but it suddenly is defeated as Tefana and her knights arrive to help. Haku gets hit by Aaron's breath, but Jin jumps in the way to protect his friend. Aaron continues to blast them, but Cain starts to protect them. Aaron finds him annoying, but Cain thinks about everyone he wants to protect, and he activates his father's ultimate skill, and Aaron recognizes it as Emperor-level magic. Cain fires his attack, and Aaron clashes against him. there is a huge beam of light that everyone sees from a distance, and Cain goes all out, wanting to protect everyone, but Haku and Jin suddenly bite him, and Cain wonders what they are doing. Seth and Dalmatia appear, telling him he has gone overboard, and we see there is nothing left of Aaron, and the fight is already over. Cain realizes the onslaught is over, and they tell him that all the monsters have retreated back into the forest, so the town is safe. Cain celebrates with his friends, but we see he gets reprimanded by the king. The king asks about the beam of light, saying it was visible across the entire kingdom, and people started thinking it was the coming of God. Cain says he had to use his emperor-level magic against Aaron, but the king reminds him he can't just use such devastating magic. They end up having a ceremony for Cain, where Cain is promoted to a viscount, and he is given the domain of Dorenthal. However, after the ceremony, Tefana reveals Dorenthal is a problematic domain, where all the past nobles in charge have failed to control, because their adventurer guild has too much power. Telestia wants to protest to her father, but Cain thinks it will be okay, and he thinks it will be exciting to build a new town. They think he'll do a great job, but they all remind him not to go overboard. They head off to Dorenthal, but it seems Cain has caused quite the commotion, as a guard reports his antics to the king. It seems Cain immediately headed to the Adventurers Guild, where the adventurers tried to give him a welcoming, but he easily crushes them all. After that, at the tavern, he sees some men kicking the maid girl, so he kicked them out as well, but the guard ended up arresting him. The king can't believe what he is hearing, but the duke finds it all amusing. Cain tells Telestia and Silk all about Dorenthal, but Seth suddenly appears, begging for his help. Seth explains he was kicked out by his wife because he was caught cheating, but his wife suddenly appears. She pays her respects to Cain, but she wonders what he thinks about Seth's actions. Cain thinks he is wrong for cheating, especially since he already has such a beautiful wife, and the demon is flattered. Seth warns Cain that women change after they get married, but Telestia and Silk both reprimand him. The king continues to receive the report about Cain, and it seems he has even taken out the Dark Guild. The guard tells the king that Cain went even further, saying he built a wall, and we see he actually built an entire castle. Telestia thinks it's even bigger than the palace, thinking about how her father would feel, and they tell him he has gone overboard once again. But that's where this video ends. Remember to like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.